Now, I'll let you know, I knew nothing about One Piece before watching this series. I mean, for years, I thought the main character's name was Mr. One Piece. I thought, oh, yeah, the stretchy guy. Yeah, Mr. One Piece. Yeah, I was like, no, you guys, I was corrected by you guys, and also One Piece. Which, by the way, let me say, so many fandoms are like very aggressive and very protective, and there's a lot of gatekeeping. But I really appreciate kind of how wholesome and accepting the One Piece community was. Like, even when I would maybe not get every single name right or whatever, or I'd just be talking about it, they'd be like, oh, it's so good to have like a new fan. Let me tell you about the show. That was actually really nice. I really liked that. It was so different than what I think a lot of people experience when entering to like a new fandom. We're going to go ahead and we're going to move on to the next part of my show, and that is my top 10 best TV shows of 2023. Now, I was able to see a lot of films in 2023. Of course, not everything. There was some stuff that I missed, that I regretted not seeing earlier, that I imagine maybe could have made my top 10 best, or maybe my top 10 worst. And I'll still definitely review those films when I have the time, hopefully sometime in January and over the next couple of weeks and maybe months, along with all the other upcoming releases in 2024 as well. But I guess one of my big regrets this year is that I was not able to watch that much television. Not that I didn't watch any TV shows. I was able to put together a top 10 list with an honorable mention. But sadly, I wasn't able to see some of the most beloved shows this year. I'm still behind on Succession, so I was not able to watch the most recent season, which everyone's lauding as being fantastic. I really do want to watch that. I didn't watch Beef, one of Netflix's most successful shows from this past year, which I know is on a lot of people's best of lists, and I'm sure there are several others. But again, I was able to check out a number of shows and a lot of animation, but of course not every animated show, but enough. So just wanted to go ahead and state that at the top, because people are going to be asking, where is Succession? Where is Beef? And sadly, I just wasn't able to watch those last year because other things took priority. I just didn't have the time, sadly. Or stuff like even the House of Usher, which we were just talking about before starting this. So, However, I did want to start, before we go ahead and jump into the top 10, I did want to bring up at least one honorable mention. And that honorable mention for best TV shows of 2023 is Invincible Season 2, Part 1. Now, for those that don't know, Invincible is an adaptation of Robert Kirkman's comic book of the same name. Follows a 17-year-old Mark Grayson, who, starts out as a typical teenager, but then grows into a superhero. His father, Omni-Man, is one of the most powerful superheroes on the planet, and he initially guides him on his path to be a hero. But if you watch the first season, you realize there's a huge twist. Nolan Grayson, Omni-Man, he actually is an alien invader that has been tasked by his people, the Viltrumites, to conquer Earth. And he was actually responsible for murdering the premier superhero team, the Guardians of the Globe. Mark Grayson discovers this, and that pretty much sets up Season 2. The first part of Season 2, which we got 4 episodes, it's dealing with the aftermath. It's dealing with the fallout of Nolan Grayson, of Omni-Man's betrayal of Earth. And it's not only Mark Grayson, Invincible, dealing with that, struggling with his father's, very complicated legacy, but also trying to find himself, trying to balance his life with his superhero responsibilities, also entering college for the first time, trying to maintain his relationship, but always constantly dealing with, not only the revelation that his father had been lying to him his entire life, not only dealing with his father betraying him and brutally beating him, but just the fact that he lost his dad. And also the same for Mark's mother, Debbie Grayson, who, by the way, I am so glad that they have been giving so much to that character in the adaptation. Like in the comics, she's such a nothing character. Like she's just a sad wine mom that just cries most of the time. They give absolutely nothing to her. And so Robert Kirkman even said, like, no, we are gonna make a lot of changes, and we're gonna, since aspects of the comic are obviously dated, and I think one of the best things that they've changed is just giving so much more agency to Debbie Grayson. I've really enjoyed that. We also introduced to a number of new characters. The villainous Ainstrom Levy, who will be in the Thorn, who will be a thorn in the side of Invincible Mark Grayson for some time. We're kind of seeing the formation of his villainous identity and getting little hints at what his plan will eventually be. And Mark kind of still again dealing with the fallout of his father taking on responsibilities, and also the fact that a lot of people in the superhero community just don't trust him. They don't trust him because he is the son of Omni-Man who tried to conquer Earth. And he's always dealing with that fact. And, again, this is not a complete season since they only gave us the first 4 episodes. And part 2, of this recording, as I speak right now, is probably going to be out in the next couple weeks. So I'll definitely be reviewing those, and I'll definitely be covering that. And I'm looking forward to watching it. But I really love what they were able to do here. Like, there's certain also just things that I think they improved on. Like, most of the animation in season 1 was quite good. They definitely cut some corners in certain episodes. Sometimes you have some characters that slide across the screen and look kind of awkward, They use a little CGI occasionally. And this part 1, and also the Adam Eve episode, which kind of served as a prologue, gave us more history about Eve Wilkins and her origins, and that was a fantastic preview and made me even more excited for part 1 of season 2. But I have to say, I think the animation has definitely improved in season 2. I feel like because season 1 was such a hit, Amazon probably gave access to the creators and the filmmakers just more resources, more money to get all this done. And you can tell it looks great. So much of the animation and the choreography is beautiful. And it's brutal, it's bloody, it's gory. People are being disemboweled and exploding. There's a lot of meat. There's a lot of meat and blood in this series, and it can be hard to watch at times. And also, kind of wrap this up, like the performances from so many of the voice actors across the board are fantastic, particularly with Steven Yeun, who voices Invincible Mark Grayson. Sandra Oh, who is the voice of Debbie Grayson. She gets so many great moments in this series. Some of my favorite moments are with her. She's kind of, you can argue, is the B plot of the show, but it's such a fascinating and sad B plot that I really like. And of course, J.K. Simmons, who has, had a illustrious career, not only as an actor, obviously, an Oscar-winning actor, but also as a fantastic voice actor, appearing in everything from The Legend of Korra to Gravity Falls, and now this, being the voice of Omni-Man. And, of course, he returns here. And we get to learn more about him and how he's struggling with the choices that he's made and confronted with a lot of his choices and mistakes. And this part of the season kind of leaves off on a cliffhanger in regards to his character and what could potentially happen to him, along with Mark, who is now tasked with a really disturbing responsibility, and I imagine he's going to struggle to handle something like that. So I really love part 1. I'm very much looking forward to part 2. I didn't want to include it on my top 10 list just because I was like, well, we don't have the full season, So maybe in 2024, Invincible season 2 will be on my top 10 list. But I want to give it a shout out because I do think it's a great show, and for people who maybe are a little sick of superhero content, offers something a little different, something like, the Boys. It's kind of in that vein where it's a critique on the superhero genre. And I think in order to keep a genre alive and to keep it healthy, you often have to critique it. You need to have things that kind of go against, prototypical expectations when it comes to that type of those types of movies or TV shows or animated superhero shows. So really loved Invincible season 2, part 1. But now, my friends, let's go ahead and move on to my 10th best TV show of 2023, and that is The Last of Us Season 1. Now, I have been talking about The Last of Us for years. The game specifically. This is an adaptation of the first video game in Naughty Dog's series, and The Last of Us, to me, at least the first game, is one of the best games of the previous decade, of the 2010s. It takes place in this post-apocalyptic world in which this pandemic has occurred. This mass fungal infection has overtaken the planet, which causes the host to transform into these very grotesque zombie-like creatures. And we primarily focus on two characters. We focus on the character of Joel, who witnessed the events of the infection in its first days, and later on the character of Ellie, an immune teenager to the infection. And Joel is tasked for taking her from one place within the United States to the other, so this organization called the Fireflies can manufacture a cure. It's a great game. It's a beautiful world, a wonderful story, great voice acting across the board. And again, this adaptation was announced, I feel like, a while ago. And I admit, I was one of those people, I'm like, I don't see why you're adapting this. Like, the story itself is already so well told and written and acted. I feel like it's just going to be lesser if you just try to adapt it. Like, I'm not against video game adaptations. As a matter of fact, I think the next half of the 2020s, and certainly into the 2030s, that's going to probably become the dominant genre, much like the comic book genre was the kind of the dominant blockbuster genre of the 2000s and the 2010s. I feel like that's what video games is eventually going to be. We've seen recent successes like the Super Mario Bros. Movie, obviously in theaters being one of the most highest-grossing films of 2023, and obviously fantastic video game adaptations on streaming and television, such as our Arcane or Castlevania or Cyberpunk, right? So that's going to happen. And so I want more, and expand on these stories and things, of course. But this one was like, I feel like you needed to. But, as they started to put out more trailers, I was like, oh, I'm liking these trailers. And I went, okay, well, I'll go ahead and give the show a shot. And I ended up liking a lot of this series. I think they did a good job. And I really actually appreciate a number of the changes that they had made. This is produced by Craig Mazin, who previously did one of my other favorite shows of the last couple of years, Chernobyl, which is a 5-episode miniseries focusing on the Chernobyl event in the 80s in Ukraine. Loved it. Loved that series. I was like, oh, he's kind of a perfect choice. And, of course, Neil Druckmann is one of the co-creators of The Last of Us. He is also one of the producers and creators of the series. And I appreciate, actually, a lot of the changes they made. Like, it pretty much follows the main plot of the game, although they've added some things and they've changed certain events, and I like the majority of those changes. One of my favorite episodes was episode 3, which focused on the characters of Bill and Frank. Now in the game, we really only interact with the character of Bill. The character of Frank is absent, and there's a reason as to why that is. I don't want to spoil the game for anyone who hasn't played it, of course. But the show pretty much focuses on them way before the kind of events with Joel and Ellie, and we see their relationship. We see their romance, and to me, it was one of the most heartwarming, well-written, romantic episodes of a TV series I've ever seen within, 45 to 50 minutes. It was beautiful. I cried twice watching that episode. I was incredibly impressed with it. And then, of course, you had many other episodes with some great guest stars and recurring characters and many emotional moments. But I also, want to, praise Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey, who played the characters of Joel and Ellie, respectively. They really grew on me, and I think they had great chemistry throughout the series. And and I have to admit, I was like, I was wrong to misjudge it. I provided reasons as to why I wasn't sure, because I thought the source material was already so good to begin with and didn't necessitate an adaptation. But they did a great job. They did a great job. Matter of fact, I kind of almost would have wanted them to kind of take their time even more, because they get through all the events of the games for the most part. Not every single thing's in it, but like the big plot points certainly are. I mean, really, the first game you could have probably told in like 2 seasons if you wanted. I think that's still maybe the one thing. Maybe I feel like they rushed a little bit through certain events. I would have minded like sitting with these characters a little bit more, seeing more interactions. And of course, also, I think a complaint some people had was we didn't get to see the infected all the time. Not that I need to see them all the time, but certainly in the back half, I noticed that they were definitely absent, where, of course, in the game, they most certainly were not. And I know they've already said, well, when we do Season 2, they're going to get more infected. I'm like, okay, that's fine. But I don't know. I feel like maybe I would have wanted 2 seasons to tell the first game. I mean, maybe because I know this was it wasn't 10 episodes. I think it was like 8 or 9. I think it was 9 episodes. Maybe 2 9-episode seasons. I think would have been enough. And again, you could have added more to it, because I actually liked the additions that they made. I thought they were actually quite good. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed this season, despite my initial misgivings and a couple complaints, but I actually really, really enjoyed it. And moving on from number 10, shall we get to my 9th best TV show of 2023, and that is The Boys spinoff, Gen V. This is from obviously the same creators as The Boys, the hit Amazon series. Probably Amazon's, The Boys is Amazon's like #1 series, which of course is this critique, this parody of superhero content. What if superheroes existed in our world? And I think they nailed it. Where superheroes are treated like celebrities, and they have all the issues that we so often see of celebrities and other people. A world completely controlled by consumerism and capitalism and greed, and you have these heroes with no inhibitions, heroes, quote unquote, doing the worst, the most horrible of things. And it's been going on for 3 seasons, obviously an adaptation of the graphic novels, which I do not like at all. I read the first volume and I really disliked it, and I was like, you're going to adapt this? All right, good luck. I like Garth Ennis and Preacher series, the comic book series, that is, not the show. But The Boys wasn't for me. But they went ahead and they're like, oh yeah, we're adapting it, but we're going to just change everything and do whatever we want, which is for the best. And I think The Boys has been great. Again, it's been much like Invincible. It's been a fantastic palate cleanser, I think, to superhero content. It's not doing the same typical things we've seen a lot of big comic book movies and comic book fare, which I think is great. Again, that's how you keep the genre alive and healthy. And then we got a spinoff before. We got Diabolical, that animated anthology. It's like, oh, that was nice. Okay, again, it's an anthology series, so some things work, some things don't. Depends on you, of course. Like things, dislike things with those types of shows and movies, right? And then they announced that they were going to do another spinoff, and it was going to focus on a school for young superheroes, and it's a Godolphin University of crime fighting, I believe that's what it's called. And this is where young kids are trained to use their powers and prepare them for really a life working for the Vought Corporation to whatever degree. And we focus on all these different kids, and we see their morality and how they interact with each other and how they get corrupted along the way. But of course, there's a dark conspiracy behind the scenes, and you have several of the characters discovering this and trying to stop it, because it endangers not only themselves and their fellow students, but also the entirety of the superhero community. And it has a relatively unknown cast, but a very talented cast. Jazz Sinclair and Lizzie Broadway, Derek Liu, Asher German, like just some amazing performances from these young leads. And I really love this show. to a degree, it almost felt at times like a parody, like a critique of CW shows. There were certain moments and scenes where it almost felt like they were trying to ape those shows, but they would quickly pull the rug out from under you, and they would do something incredibly funny or horrifying or grotesque. And it was great. I mean, this is very much in the universe of The Boys. So people that thought like, oh, they're just doing the CW version of The Boys. Not really. At times they're doing like a parody of what the CW would do, but really it's very much within that same world, and you get some very tense moments, you get some great performances, and of course some weird, gratuitous, disgusting action that will shock you. Like the series I should have expected, like the first episode, it's like, oh my God, well, I should have expected that. Like our lead character played by Jess and Claire, she has telekinetic control of her blood. And in order to often use her power, she has to like cut herself repeatedly over and over and over again. It's kind of hard to watch. And so you're going to see a lot of stuff like that. You're going to see a soup, as they call them in the series, who is, a little insane. And sometimes he imagines a world filled with puppets. And so you're going to see a lot of puppet violence and a lot of puppet death. You got a Magneto character in the show. You have a telepath who's able to erase people's minds and repress certain things. It's like it does a lot with powers that we've seen before, but just does these little twisted variations on them that makes them very fresh. It makes them refreshing. So I really enjoyed Gen V, and it sets up for the next season. Apparently, they're going to be doing kind of like crossovers. Like this is apparently taking place alongside the events of The Boys season 4, which I believe is coming out this year. So I would not be shocked if we're going to be seeing some of these Gen V characters pop up in The Boys season 4, because we most definitely see several Boys characters pop up in this series, which was great. Really, really good. And speaking of superhero content, chat, my 8th best TV show of 2023, and that is Loki season 2. Now, I think Marvel definitely had a rough year this year. The MCU, that is. Love Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I think that was definitely the best of their theatrical efforts, no question about it. But I really want to give a shout out to Loki. I think Loki has been their absolute best Disney Plus series. Obviously, this is still following Tom Hiddleston's Loki, at least a variation of that character that we've been following for, God, at this point, like over a decade now in the MCU. One of the best characters in the MCU, in my opinion. He was captured by the TVA, the Time Variance Authority, and he's been tasked since then to basically stabilize the organization. They figured out that the person in control was an individual called He Who Remains, and he is a Kane variant. And now, after the choices made by a female variant of Loki, Sylvie, the TVA, and the universe that they exist in, the multiverse itself is unraveling, and they need to find a way to stop it. Now, I pretty much reviewed the first couple episodes and eventually did like my entire series review. And I think the first episode kind of got off to a rough start. I was a little concerned because they were doing a lot of timey-wimey, mumbo-jumbo speak, and I was like, I don't know about that, even though they introduced a great character, and Ki-Hu Kwan plays OB, who's kind of like the tech guy for the TVA, but I was like, I wasn't sure. But I think like episode 2 on, it just kept getting better and better and better. And by those last several episodes, we got some of the best content in the MCU in years. And Tom Hiddleston is Loki. I mean, he's always been consistently great, even in the weakest of films, even in something like Thor: The Dark World. Like, he's still so good in that movie. It's just kind of like it's a breath of fresh air when he shows, like, oh, thank God he's here. I don't want to deal with these dark elves or whatever the hell's going on. And it's like, Loki's here. Good. But honestly, I think this is the best he's ever been as the character. I mean, we've seen an entire arc for him where he started out as this selfish villain, and he has grown into this selfless hero. And I think so often in comics, you know, when we see like a villain become a hero, they so often fumble it, or it just feels so unnatural. I usually point to, like, in the comics, like Harley Quinn, you know, where she's like, even though she's killed a lot of people and done horrible things, like Batman's like, oh yeah, you can join me, it's fine. It's like, what? No, what are we talking about? It doesn't make any sense. But here, you know, what we see with Loki throughout the MCU in the season 1 and the season 2, it's like, oh wow, no, he does earn it, because we realize, like, the thing, like, he was always coveting the throne, he's always coveting power, but, you know, in the end of this show, the thing that he, like, not only wants to save the universe, the thing he wants to protect probably most of all is just his friends. And there's just something so earnest and wholesome about that, and the sacrifices he makes, the sacrifices over and over and over again, hundreds of years that he sacrifices to just try to save his friends over and over again. It's incredibly compelling. And the last 2 episodes, especially like the last one, where he accepts that responsibility. He is burdened. I'm burdened with glorious purpose, but he finds out what that actually is by the end of the show. And it's a beautiful moment. It's a beautiful thing. And, of course, Tom Hiddleston is just buoyed by some fantastic supporting performances. Again, you know, Ke Huy Quan does an amazing job in this. Owen Wilson is very, very good. Sophie DiMartino returns as Sylvie. Tara Strong is Miss Minutes, is one of the most underrated performances there. She is terrifying. And you guys know what I'm talking about, like the weird, crazy stuff that they do with her. I was like, oh, this needs to be dealt with very quickly. I love that. And, you know, Jonathan Majors, who's been in the news lately, he also does a very good job as multiple versions of Kane in this show. He Who Remains and Victor Timely. So yeah, overall, I thought this was a great way to wrap up Loki's story. Will he possibly return in future MCU films? I could possibly see him, but if they choose to never have him come back, and that this is it, that's perfect. I'm totally fine with that, because they did such a fantastic job with his story and giving him this well-earned character arc. And moving on from Loki season 2, we get to my number 7. My 7th best TV show of 2023, and that is My Adventures with Superman. Now, for those that don't know, I'm a big Superman fan. I love the character. I own many of the comics. I grew up watching Superman the Animated Series, obviously the Christopher Reeve movies, particularly with Superman 1 and 2, right? But I have to admit, I've talked about this before, the last 10 years has been pretty rough being a Superman fan. You know, we've had to see, in my opinion, a bastardized version of the character that was presented to us in Zack Snyder's Man of Steel, in which he chose to adapt him and present him as a mopey, brooding psychopath that seemed to want to kill more people than save. And that's been rough. That's been very rough, because that's just not who Superman is. Superman is a character who is kind. He is a character who is kind in a world that thinks kindness is antiquated. And that's what makes him so charming and fantastic, in my opinion. He's the character that will not swoop. I mean, he'll swoop down, he'll save the day, you know, but he also will take a moment to put his hand on your shoulder or hug you and tell you, like, it's going to be okay. That's what makes him Superman. That's why I love the character. And I feel like we have not seen that version of the character adapted, certainly theatrically, in that way in quite some time. As a matter of fact, it's the complete opposite. But My Adventures with Superman realized that version of the character so incredibly well. In this series, it follows a very young Clark Kent as he builds his kind of secret identity as Superman and explores his mysterious origins. This is Superman who doesn't know he's from Krypton, doesn't understand it, doesn't know about Jor-El or anything at all. He thinks he's just confused by it. He meets a very young Lois Lane who's trying to be a reporter at the Daily Planet. His best friend is Jimmy Olsen, who's been his friend since college, and they're roommates. And the three of them basically, team up, and they are exposed to numerous versions of Superman characters that we've seen throughout the decades. Everything from Parasite to Live Wire, and I imagine even Lex Luthor, though they're being very cute and coy with it. But I think that was him. And Mr. Mxyzptlk, fantastic there. Mr. Mxyzptlk, excuse me. I got to say the name right. Mr. Mxyzptlk. But I think the thing that I love most about the show is, of course, they got all the Superman content right, where he's just so earnest and wholesome and kind. But man, the thing that is just so charming about this series is the relationships between the trio. How, they go through the trials and tribulations, and, Clark is lying to them, although you understand why he's lying, because he's scared, which I totally understand that. But how they handle the friendship between Clark and Lois and Jimmy is great, and how they handle the romance, the beautiful romance between Clark and Lois is perfect to me. It's just, anytime they just have like a cute little romantic moment, it's like, oh my God, my heart just melts. I love it. I really, really love it. And the animation, Studio Mir, they do the animation for the series, and it's kind of anime-esque. And I know apparently that was a turnoff to some people. I'm not really bothered by that. I like anime, so it's just like, it's just a new style for Superman. I think it works. I think it creates obviously some very cute moments, and some warm moments, but also we get some really terrifying, kind of horrific interpretations of characters and scenes and sequences. That I was like, oh wow, this style of animation suits Superman so well. It has a fantastic the first half of the season is already very good. I think the last half of the season is even better, and that's when it really gets going. Introduced to a lot of other characters and changing relationships, and the romance between Clark and Lois deepens a lot, and I really, really like that. And it sets up what I imagine will be a great season 2, and some longtime Superman villains are probably gonna make their debut, and so I can't wait for the second season. But what they gave me here was so good. It was a wonderful palate cleanser after enduring so many years of, again, a awful version of Superman. It was nice to see him be kind and wholesome and just be a good person. So thank you to My Adventures Superman for giving that to me, to all the Superman fans out there who have been yearning for that for so long. And moving on from number 7, chap, my 6th best TV show of 2023, and it is The Legend of Vox Machina Season 2. And this series is based on the first campaign of the Dungeons & Dragons web series, Critical Role. It stars numerous veteran voice actors that you've heard throughout your entire life, from Laura Bailey to Ashley Johnson to Matthew Mercer, Liam O'Brien, Sam Riegel, Travis Willingham, among others, and numerous other guest stars from Will Friedle, Lance Reddick, sadly, Chad, who just passed away not too long ago. He also lent his voice to this series. And this is obviously the second season to the first season. This is where, after they save the realm from the evil and destructive hands of the Briarwoods, the Vox Machina is faced with saving the world again. This time from a sinister group of magic dragons known as the Chroma Conclave, and they're sent on this quest to find these vestiges, these items of power, in hopes to battle them and to potentially save the realm. So much of the first season focused on Percy DeRollo. And it was great. That's why Percy was my favorite character in the last season. And so much, the story was centered around him and his family and what happened with him and the Briarwoods. It was amazing. But if I had a critique of season 1, is that not that we didn't have great interactions between all the other characters, all the members of Vox Machina, from Pike to Grog to Vex and Vax to Scanlan and other characters that showed up along the way. But, we didn't get to know them as much as I would have liked. Here, they have so many episodes where we do. You can even point to this is the episode where we're going to learn more about Keyleth. And in this episode, we're going to learn more about Grog. And because they did that, along with the thorough line of the main story of trying to find these powerful objects to battle these dragons. But I just appreciated that they were able to provide this fantastic backstory and to show it. They didn't sit us down and just go all right, here you go, this is my backstory. Now, they didn't Zack Snyder us. It's not like Five Nights at Freddy's or something like that. It's no, they showed us, in a lot of cases their backstories were tragic, and we were provided with more context as to why these people are the way they are. But despite their tragic circumstances, despite their tragic backstories, all of that brought them together, and seeing them just interact with one another and bounce off each other, and it's great. They feel like a family. These are such well-written characters, and I love this series. I'm so glad it's been such a huge hit on Amazon. The 3rd season's on the way. They're doing spin-offs of the other Critical Role campaigns, Mighty Nine. I'm sure others eventually too. But I think it's also great because it is, first of all, you don't even have to, much like the Dungeons & Dragons movie, which came out last year, which, again, I really encourage people to check that movie out. It's very good. But much like that movie, you don't need to be a Dungeons & Dragons fan to get into this series. By itself, it's just this really fun action-adventure, adult animated fantasy show with really great writing and world building and beautiful animation and great action sequences and choreography. So it's great that it pleases both D&D fans, because it definitely indulges in it, and it pleases the Critical Role fans that have been following that for God knows how long, years at this point. But it also pleases people like me, who, my experience of Dungeons & Dragons is very, very limited. I recently actually did a campaign last year, which was super fun, which was great. But, I've been exposed to more D&D stuff over time, and people in my chat, of course, have been exposing me to D&D stuff as well. But I think this helps too. It makes it more accessible. And I think that's great. And so, yeah, that's why Legend of Vox Machina Season 2 is just one of the best animated shows right now. But now, let's go ahead and get to my 5th best movie of 2023. Oh, excuse me. I'm thinking movies. I was talking movies for so long. Not movies, dum-dum. No. Let's go ahead and move on to my 5th best TV show of 2023. And that is Adventure Time, Fiona and Cake. I can now say Season 1 because they've already greenlit Season 2. But for those that don't know, Fiona and Cake, it's an American adult animated series. And it focuses on the titular characters of Fiona and the human and Cake the cat. And there are alternative versions of the main characters of Finn the human and Jake the dog from the original animated series Adventure Time, which at this point came out, God, over a decade ago. I think 13 or 14 years ago. Also along with the former Ice King, who is now a human, Son Pentecoff. And the series focuses on them traveling across the multiverse, really trying to find themselves and find purpose, but also trying to avoid a god auditor who is trying to wipe out Fiona and Cake the cat from existence, wipe them out and their world, basically erase them because they were created technically legally by another godlike entity. Now, I watched a lot of Adventure Time back in the day. I don't know if I've watched all of this. I think there's 10 seasons, and they've had numerous specials. But I've watched quite a bit of the original series, and I fell in love with it. And what was so cool about the show is, oh, one, it just feels like, oh, it's a great show about a kid and his magic dog, and they're hanging out in this fantastical world, and they're going on quests and stuff. It's a great sci-fi series, fantasy series, action adventure. It's wonderful, right? Great supporting characters, all weird and goofy and fun, kind of dark. But speaking of dark, it's that darkness, though, because over time, the series started to reveal more and more about this world, and, we discovered that, oh, this world came into being because thousands of years ago, humanity wiped itself out in a nuclear apocalypse, which they all refer to, the characters in the show refer to as the Great Mushroom War because of all the nuclear explosions. And because of that nuclear holocaust, magic came back into the world, both whimsical and obviously dark. And it was obviously a huge success. Critical success, so many fans, so many kids grew up watching that show. And we were, and in that series, we were introduced to these gender-bent characters of Fiona and Cake, who were we were led to believe initially, the fan fiction creation of the Ice King, who started out as one of the villains in the series. But later on, we learned more about him and his tragic origins, connections to characters like Marceline, the Vampire Queen, and like who he was as a human, who was an archaeologist before the events of the Great Mushroom War, and he's dealing with a number of issues and loss in his life. In any case, Fiona and Cake are indeed real. They, along with Simon, go on this epic quest in order to save themselves, but also find themselves. And I was really looking forward to the show because I was like, oh yeah, these characters are great. Because anytime they would show up in the spinoffs, it was always very, very funny. But here, I was kind of shocked at how good it actually is, and how mature it is. Like, I have a lot of respect and appreciation for animators or storytellers that work in animation medium that will write animated shows for an audience, but as they continue throughout multiple seasons, they actually age it up as the audience ages over time. And that is very much the case with something like Adventure Time. Like, it's similar to like Bruce Timm with Batman Animated Series and throughout the history of the DCAU. Like, those shows will get like a little darker and more mature and more adult as they go on, and that's why it's beloved to this day. And it's very much the same case with something like Adventure Time, where this isn't, I mean, they're swearing, there's a lot of sexual innuendo. I mean, characters are dying in this series. There's blood and there's everyone's having an existential crisis half the time, and some characters are like, I just want to die, let me die. This is like, wow. This was, I forgot how many episodes they released. I think it was 2 every week for, I guess, 5 weeks. And I was always so excited, because you just never knew what they were going to do every episode and what worlds they were going to go to. But it was, and the they would change depending on the world they would go to. They would change the animation style sometimes. And I really love that. But yeah, and it managed to tell this really, contained story. Like, I wonder if they thought, we don't know if we're going to get another season or something. I thought it was just going to be a one-off. Here we go. Here's the season. Everyone's been asking for something like this for so long, and they nailed it. But apparently it was such a success on HBO Max, as it's called now. It's getting a second season, even in the era of David Zaslav, Zumbafu, as I like to call him, the man who despises animation. So that's great to see that they're getting another season. Even if we didn't get it, this season was this series was great. I had so much love for it, and it surprised me. If you loved Adventure Time, you're gonna love this. I highly recommend it. And man, I'll tell you this: if you have never watched Adventure Time before, I would tell you to watch some of the Fiona and Cake little spin-off episodes, which are not many. It's only maybe 2 or 3 or 4 maybe, and maybe some of the Ice King stuff with his origins with Marceline, and then you watch those so you have some context, and then go into this series and then watch. I think you won't be too lost. There'll be some stuff. Obviously, listen, if you're a Adventure Time fan, they're gonna do a lot of callbacks and stuff. It's like, oh shit, which is really, really cool. We do see Finn, who's now much older. He's in his late 20s now at this point, or hell, maybe even his 30s. He's not dealing with certain things very well, which I think is great. But take that, and then you can go into the show. I highly recommend it. One of the biggest surprises of this year. And moving on from my fifth favorite show, my fifth best TV show of 2024. We're going to go ahead and go on to my fourth best TV show of 2023, and that is Barry. Barry season 4. Now, again, for people that don't know, Barry is a comedic black comedic crime drama television series created by Bill Hader, and it has Hader, who stars as a character named Barry Berkman, who is a former U.S. Marine who now works as a hitman. He, upon traveling to Los Angeles on a job to kill a target, he eventually finds himself joining an acting class. And in interacting with the acting class teacher, played by Henry Winkler, meeting an aspiring actress, Sally, played by Sarah Goldberg, and becoming her boyfriend, but still indulging in the criminal element in L.A. through his associates like Monroe Fuchs, played by one of the greatest living character actors of all time, Stephen Root, and NoHo Hank, played by Anthony Kerrigan, who works for the Chechen mob. And this has been like one of the best just shows, live action shows of the last several years, from season 1, season 2, and then into season 3. I mean, it's very much, like I said, a black comedy. It's dark as hell, but even between all those that darkness, they managed to fit in some really goofy comedic moments. So much of the series feels like it could take place in the world of like a Breaking Bad or a Better Call Saul. It's like, well, all that stuff takes place in Albuquerque, New Mexico. This story was just going on, just takes place in Los Angeles, California. But it started out as you're kind of, to a degree, at least in the first season, on Barry's side. You want him to kind of get out of the criminal lifestyle, pursue acting, which, he at times is actually gifted at, although it's probably based on horrific experiences. But so much of the show is, it's not only a crime show, but it's also just a critique on, I think, Los Angeles, but also Hollywood and Hollywood filmmaking. Probably what Bill Hader has been exposed to for however many decades he's been in the industry, and has just seen and observed, along with other people that he clearly works with on the show. It's two of those things, and he's managed to blend them into this fantastic, just black comedy crime drama. And much like a Walter White, which we were initially on his side in the beginning, but we go through many seasons, subsequent seasons, and we begin to resent him and downright hate him because he's truly, truly despicable. It's crazy. Like Barry Berkman, he gets worse and worse and worse in the best way possible throughout this entire show, along with so many of the other characters alongside him. He's such an incredibly toxic influence. And by the time we get to season 4, it's like, we're like, Barry's got to go. He needs to go. He's too much of a problem. He's doing all these horrible, horrible things. And after season 3, I'm like, how are you going to end? Like, season 3 could have been like the end of the show. It kind of honestly could have been the end. It's like, oh, that was it. And, the circumstances is like Barry's now in jail and he has to escape, and what that's going to lead to. They do a very bold choice midway through the season that I actually did not expect. I don't think anyone expected. That kind of changes a lot, and we see the characters in a different light after something that they choose to do. But I really just liked how they wrapped up a number of the storylines, with NoHo Hank and Monroe Fuchs, with Gene Cousineau, played by Henry Winkler. They wrapped up a lot of their storylines in ways I didn't think I just like, well, this is how it's gonna go, and they're like, nope, it's not gonna be that way. It's like, wow, I really, really like that. And also with Barry, and also with Sally as well. If I have any critiques of this season, I feel like the finale, I think for the most part, is great. It's very good. But the very last scene, I understood what Bill Hader was doing in that last scene. I just feel like we saw it through the eyes of a character that we don't really know, or it's a character we're introduced to later in the season, but it's now it's an older version of that character now. a very recent character, played by a new actor, just for that scene. And it just felt kind of weird. I feel like that scene would have been better had we saw it through the eyes of someone that we have seen this entire series with. And to go, that's not how it happened. I think that would have been better. I think, but at the same time, it's just like, oh, but how they wrapped up Fuchs' story, how they wrapped up NoHo Hank's story and Sally's story. It's Kusano's story. It's just like, yeah, who would you have done it with unless you just want to make a change where it's just one of them in that final scene. Like that's my only critique, but what Bill Hader does, I think he directed every episode this season. I think he's directed a lot of these episodes in the past. Not every single episode in the past season, but he's directed many of them. But I think he directed every episode. And I'm very impressed. And he makes some like really interesting choices. He has like an episode where like one character is clearly having a psychotic breakdown and what's there is not really there. And it's really creepy and really disturbing. And I'm like, I want to see him do a horror movie. I think he can, apparently I didn't know about this until I think watching like season 4, but I was exposed to like Bill Hader's just love of film. The guy's like, that was his first love, like not even comedy. It was just films and filmmaking, obsessively watching movies like Hitchcock thrillers, like, Rear Window or something. And I've listened to these podcasts. I've listened to these, I'm subscribed to a YouTube channel called John Wake Bake Sale. John Wake was the filmmaker behind Universal monster movies like Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein. I think he also did The Invisible Man. But he has a lot of videos of Bill Hader talking about like a ton of movies that he just grew up watching and has been obsessed with throughout his entire life. And I was like, oh, this is very interesting. And he loves horror. He loves like those types of films. And so I'm very excited to see what he's going to do in the future. But he cut his teeth on this show. And maybe at the final scene, this series, I would have liked that they changed something. But overall, what a fantastic season. And it's one of the best just black comedy crime dramas of all time. Certainly of the 21st century. Absolutely loved it. And moving on, chat, my third best TV show of 2023, and that show is One Piece. Netflix's One Piece, chat, which is a fantasy adventure series and an adaptation of the anime and manga One Piece. And the series pretty much follows the initial adventures of the Straw Hat Pirates, specifically their captain, Monkey D. Luffy, who wants to be king of the pirates, along with a variety of other characters that he recruits along the way. He's pursued by the Marines, who are basically the security force, the military force of this world, who task themselves of hunting down many of these pirates. It's a world filled with pirates and sailing across numerous seas and oceans, trying to find the mythical One Piece, trying to find this great treasure that has in itself created so many other pirates along the way, along the years. Now, I'll let you know, I knew nothing about One Piece before watching this series. I mean, for years, I thought the main character's name was Mr. One Piece. I thought, oh yeah, the stretchy guy. Yeah, Mr. One Piece. Yeah, it's like, no, you guys, I was corrected by you guys, and also One Piece. Which, by the way, let me say, so many fandoms are like very aggressive and very protective, and there's a lot of gatekeeping. But I really appreciate kind of how wholesome and accepting the One Piece community was. Like, even when I would maybe not get every single name right or whatever, or I'd just be talking about it, they'd be like, oh, it's so good to have like a new fan. Let me tell you about the show. And like, they were so, they're just happy that people are seeing at least a variation of something they've been watching for like God knows how long at this point. Like, the anime's been going on for decades. It has 1,000 episodes and numerous movies and TV specials and other types of specials. And of course the manga's, still going on. So that was actually really nice. I really liked that. It was so different than what I think a lot of people experience when entering to like a new fandom. And it was also my highest performing video in 2023. It did very well. I think, again, for my channel, which has seen a significant growth recently, which has been great, but I got like 8,000 views. I was like, oh, wow. I think the last review I did, my initial impressions both did great. So that was awesome to see. But yeah, and the thing is, I think one of the reasons as to why the show is so successful, one, it helps that the original creator apparently was deeply, deeply involved. Ichiro Oda, I don't know if I'm saying his name correctly. Apologies if I'm not. But good old Mr. Oda. He's Mr. One Piece now. Good old Mr. One Piece, Mr. Oda. He served as a consultant on the show. And I mean, he was the guy that like approved like all the casting for many of the not most, probably be all of the characters, from Luffy to Nami and everyone else in between. And I just love how earnest the series is. Like it does so often in so many adaptations of numerous properties, whether it be science fiction or fantasy genre, right? There'll be like elements that the adapters be like, well, this is goofy, so we're going to have to call it out, that it's goofy, right? We're going to have to say, hey, everybody, yeah, this is weird, right? This is what it is. And I kind of dislike that. But this show doesn't really do that at all. Like one of the weirder aspects of it, like communication in this series, like over great distances, is used via snails. These giant Muppet-looking, dark crystal-looking snails that like have different faces and they have mustaches sometimes and they're all different colors, and people just talk through them. They don't have like a moment that go like, look at this fucking thing, yeah? Isn't it goofy? It's like, no, they just use them. This is the way, and this was just like, yeah, this is how it is. This is what, and I love that because it's so often that's just not the case at all. And I think because they approach the adaptation in that way, they please clearly so many of the other fans. But at the same time, it was very welcoming to new fans. Like I never felt lost while watching the show. Every time I was introduced to a new character, we really got to know them very, very well, whether they were a hero or a villain. There's some fantastic villains in this series. Everyone from, Buggy the Clown to Arlong, the Fish Man. Man, so many great characters in this first season. And I just, again, I go back, I've said this so many times with some of these other shows, whether it be My Adventures of Superman or Legend of Vox Machina, the constant character interactions. Like these characters first start out like, man, rubbing each other the wrong way to a degree. But they became friends, and then they became kind of a sort of family. They were accepting of each other's flaws, and they want to help each other. And I like that. I like that wholesomeness. And Luffy's just like, I just want to be king of the pirates. Like, he is great. He is so good in this show. So, yeah, I loved it. This was a big surprise for me. And they said that, oh yeah, we're going to be doing this for, I think they announced like the creators of the show, like, oh yeah, we got like 12 seasons worth of material. And I'm thinking like, you're going to try to keep these actors on for like 12 years. Good luck. But hey, listen, I mean, that's the future. We'll see what happens with that. But at the very least, it's great that we got such a wonderful adaptation of this property. And I'm excited for it to continue on. I think other than video game adaptations, we're going to get more and more of in the back half of the 2020s and certainly into the 2030s. I think that's going to be dominated by video game adaptations. I think we're going to start to get a lot of anime adaptations, live action anime adaptations too, both on streaming and television and in movies. So that's going to be very exciting. And moving on from One Piece, we get to my second best TV show, my second favorite TV show of 2023, and that TV show is Blue Eye Samurai. And I recently watched this. I recently did a review for the entire series, the 8 episodes that are currently available, and all I can say is, wow. I absolutely adored this animated series. It's a French and American production. And it's created by a husband and wife team, Michael Green and Amber Nozumi. I know more about Michael Green. He's a screenwriter, and he's written screenplays like Logan, He has a long relationship with the actor and filmmaker Kenneth Branagh. Has written many of his films, and this show, if people don't know, it's set during Japan's Edo period, which is like the 17th century, and we follow a half Japanese and half white sword master, Mizu. And she is on a quest for vengeance against 4 white men, one of whom she believes is her father, who illegally remained in Japan during the closing of its borders by the shogunate. And if you're a fan of great samurai movies like Seven Samurai, or Yojimbo, or even more recent stuff like 13 Assassins, and if you love spaghetti westerns like the Dollars trilogy or Once Upon a Time in the West, and of course the anime and adult animation, this show is right up your alley. You're gonna absolutely love it. I was so impressed. Like, I watched the trailer. Like, this came out I guess in November. And I watched it. I was like, oh, it looked pretty good. And I think I just didn't watch it when it had come out because I was so busy with so many things. And so able to check it out now, I was like, wow. I wish I watched it earlier, posted my review earlier. But not only is like the character of Mizo just so fascinating, again, in Japan, people who are during this period who are of mixed race, in her case, half Japanese, half white, they're looked at as less than human, of subhuman. They're looked at as animals, dogs, demons. She's so often referred to as a demon in this show, and that has made her cold. That has hardened her, and so she doesn't even want to be happy. She just wants to be satisfied, or at least her view of satisfaction is just, I just want to kill these people and then I'll be satisfied, and we follow in this path, but there's also like a vulnerability to her. She is a badass. She does some amazing, but she goes through the ringer. It's like she's an incredibly talented swordsman and warrior, but my God, she gets the crap kicked out of her in a lot of episodes, and it's bloody and it's tragic and sometimes it's hard to watch, but man, what they do with the action choreography and how she struggles through all that is incredible. But then we're introduced to some other wonderful supporting characters like Ringo, who is this kind of mountain of a man. He's kind of like the comic relief of the series. And he joins Mizo on her adventure after witnessing her abilities in his father's noodle shop, and he wants to be a great samurai, but he was born without hands. He was born without hands, and so he has stigmas against him. He has his own struggles, and I was actually worried at first, like, oh, is he going to be the big fat comedic relief that just falls down because he's fat? It's like, no, he's not that at all. Like, I loved him. Like, one, he's a great source of comedy. He's very, very funny. There's some great scenes with him. Peaches. That's all I'm going to say. I'm just going to say Peaches, and you know what I'm talking about. Hilarious. Then we're introduced to just numerous other characters. In Taigen, who was a child that Mizu grew up with, who abused her and was very mean, like a bully. She encounters him again as a rising samurai. She basically embarrasses him, and he swears vengeance against her, and he wants to restore his honor. And their relationship is very complicated and changes throughout the history of the entire series. We're also introduced to Princess Akemi, who is the betrothed, at least initially, to Taigen. She's voiced by Brenda Song, and we get like a view into the world of Japanese aristocracy, right, and royalty, and that was really fascinating, and the struggles that like she has to go through, and what she wants in her life. You have some like great supporting performances too. Like George Takei plays a character named Seki, who is kind of the mentor to Akemi. He has so many great moments in this show. Randall Park, he plays one of the villains, the Heiji, who is this incredibly rich merchant who is making all these power moves behind the scenes. And you have Kenneth Branagh. Again, there's the connection between the writer of the series and obviously Kenneth Branagh, since he wrote his so many of his movies. He voices the character of Fowler. Abijay Fowler, who is this Irish smuggler who's trying to overthrow the shogunate to bring in the Western influence, and he's a son of a bitch. He is terrifying. I mean, I loved him because I hated him to love him. He was so good in the and the animation. It's like it's a combination. You know, I'm so glad that we're now living in a time where we're seeing a proliferation of different styles of animation now. Thanks to, I think a lot of it is thanks to Into the Spider-Verse, which is that 2.5D style. Like, this isn't exactly that, but it's combination. It is a hybrid style of 2D and 3D. Like, you have these beautiful backgrounds that look like, you know, paintings, which are fantastic. But the character models are almost like puppets. They're kind of like Japanese, like puppets, like those puppet shows. A little more smooth, of course, but they do just so many creative, wonderful things with them. And I loved it. As the series goes on, you know, we learn more about these characters, especially Mizu. And yeah, it's great. Like, episode 5 is probably my favorite, and that's when we get like this very interesting backstory in regards to her character. And it's this parallel storytelling. Like, they're telling like two stories at once, and we're constantly going back and forth as she's dealing with something that's very difficult for her. And then we're seeing something that was probably even more difficult for her in the past. And it's like, it's so great. And it's already been greenlit for season 2. So we're going to get another season. And I'm so excited. I recommend this. And the episodes. The episodes aren't like 25 minutes long. These episodes are anywhere between like 40 minutes to like 35 minutes to like 35 to like 50 or 60 minutes. I think like the first episode's like 60 minutes long, and I never felt like a pacing issue. I just wanted more and more and more. I just, even when the series ended, I was like, I want more. So I can't wait. I can't wait for the next season. But if you haven't seen this, please, I implore you to check it out. But chat, my number one best TV show of 2023 is The Bear Season 2. Now, for people that haven't seen this, The Bear is a comedy drama series, and it focuses on a young award-winning chef named Carmen Brazado, Carmi, who returns to his hometown of Chicago to manage his late brother's very chaotic restaurant. After his brother passed away due to suicide. That's pretty much like the events of the first season. And the second season is Carmi and so many of the other supporting characters within the show trying to finally put together the restaurant that Carmi and his brother wanted to do for years, but were unable to due to a variety of circumstances. And like, what's so great about this show is a perfect showcase of just anxiety. That's what I would say it is. It's a show. It's like, yes, it's about cooking and the difficulties of cooking and in the restaurant scene. Like, it's no doubt about that. But if I were to just simplify it for people, it is a show about the difficulties of anxiety. And as someone who deals with anxiety and so many other people that deal with anxiety, you will probably love this show because you're going to feel like so many of these characters, whether you work in the restaurant industry or not. And yes, it deals with cooking. Although with this particular season, it's more of them just trying to realize this dream while struggling to get to that realization along the way. But we get more context for these characters. We get more background for so many, including Carmi's family. And, from characters like Richard, played by Eben Moss Bacharach. In the show, Richie was such an asshole of a character in the first season. Cousin, we learned so much more about him in this second season. That's like, oh man, I'm so sorry. Like, it changes your perspective on so many people. And Ayo Edebiri, who is one of the other major players in the show, she plays the character of Sydney. She's a talented cook in the show, and she's a chef under Carmi. She has like an even larger role in this second season. Her relationship is changing with so many other characters, including Carmi in this. But if I would tell people this. If you've never seen this series yet, I would recommend one episode in season 2. I think you'd be sold by the first episode in the first season. By the way, each episode's like 30 minutes long. I love this era of these dramas or these comedy dramas that are just like 30 minutes, and there's like not a single wasted frame. There's no filler in this show in the first season or the second season. So it's always great. It's always great. Everything that's on camera is important to the story itself and to the characters themselves. Like, I love that. But if I were to recommend one episode from this series, it's the Christmas episode from season 2, where we were introduced to so many members of Carmi's family who we've just heard about throughout the series and sound horrible. Sound so awful. And now we know why. And it's the Christmas episode because you don't need a lot of context. It's just a perfect showcase of family dysfunction. And is realized in some of the best television writing, some of the best writing on film this past year in 2023. And it has some fantastic guest stars like Jamie Lee Curtis and Bob Odenkirk and John Mulaney, John Bernthal, who is a recurring character in the show. He plays the Carmi's brother who passed away. He shows up occasionally, and we just see this dysfunctional family, and it just feels so real. Everything about it just felt so real. Like we've all gone through something like this, a variation of this ourselves, and like that episode, it just. You feel the tension between everyone's like, oh, we're going back home for the holidays. Yeah. It's that. First it starts like that. Hey, we're going back to the holidays. Yep. Let's see what happens. And you can just feel the tension, and it just builds and builds and escalates. And it's always like, and then until to the point where it's about to explode. And when it does, it's like, oh my God. But the lead up to all that is so well earned. The Bear, both season 1 and season 2, are great. And, I'm very excited for the third season. You know, this is dominating all the awards. That and probably Succession. But if you have not checked out The Bear, it's a very easy watch. You can easily watch both seasons in a week or probably in 2 weeks. And you'll be wanting the third helping. You'll be wanting that third season. But yeah, it's a fantastic series, and I highly recommend it. I highly recommend all the shows I just mentioned, from my top 10 to my honorable mention. But I hope you guys enjoyed my top 10 best TV shows of 2023. What about you guys? What are some of your favorite TV shows of this year? Do you agree with my list? Do you disagree with some of the entries? Let me know.